Yeah.
So, okay, before the break, we were looking at some of the text files and things like that. I tried to quickly install Git on my Mac since I just did a factory reset, and apparently had all kinds of permissions and stuff in the way. So I did get that. I did get Homebrew and all the permissions set over the break there. So on a Mac, should just through install Git. Were you able to get yours working and everything now, Pia?
Yeah,
Okay. Like
it updated when I did brew install Git, even though I had Git already installed.
Okay, so the config file has all that other information. Because I bet that problem that was happening in the spring as well. So really straightforward. Since I had to install it on at least one other machine, I did want to address the one thing when it installs. It shouldn't take too long, although it's already taken longer than I expected it to be. Hold that tar, so it's close. Okay, there we go. I'm going to make a quick folder, make sure getting Git init dot. We've seen all this. I'll use VI, so we can do touch readme.md. Can I zoom in here?
Should your
Yeah.
should when naming readmes, is it standard to do it in all caps on a readme? So I've always seen it as all caps.
It's pretty common. I usually don't.
Oh,
I
typically don't because that's just on.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it all the time, but I don't myself. Caps are usually used for constants, so that doesn't strike me as something as a constant because I constantly change readmes. That's like one of the most edited files in the entire project is the readme. So create that, and then I'll go in and just do some quick editing on it. All things we've seen before. Go in insert mode and hash some random words there to have something to commit, right, and quit out of that. So now when git add dot, this is the thing. This is why I couldn't remember that command the first day. I like to make mistakes in the classroom and see the errors and how to fix them, but that one I really did forget because usually what I do is I'll do git commit -m, like some message, and initial commit. Sounds like a good message. Actually, not really a good message. We're going to talk about that. And we get this error message that says you didn't set the name and the email. And it says exactly what to do. Oh, it already pulled it up from my thing. Nope, that is not the name and stuff I wanted to use. I do not use my Ivy Tech email for any of my computers. I like access the Ivy Tech account stuff if I have to for my computer. That's the reason I use my computers, so they're not locked down. So that's not the one, but get this error message, this message that includes how to fix it. So if it didn't try to automatically pull my thing, it would have the error message would say git config -- global user.name and then all of that. And usually what I do is I just copy that, paste it in, and don't even look at it. That's why I couldn't remember the one the other day. Insert and whoops. Command in. Is not command in?
You're in it. You were in it. So.
Oh, I was trying to remember how to get to the end of the line. I'm still in insert mode. Function end. That's right. Function shift end. Go in insert mode. You can always tell if you're in insert mode or not because you can't get past the last character if you're not in insert mode. Go in insert mode and oops, then change this to the email you use. But if you when you try to make the first commit, all of that stuff will show up and you can just copy and paste that message. That's what I usually do on it, and just change it to my own information instead of doing that.
And then you can, that'll let you do the amend, which is what we were trying to do also.
Yeah, yeah, this one actually said to do that, and it's already been committed, so I need to go back and amend that. But you'll notice it's like the nicest error messages anywhere in programming. It gives you a paragraph long description and then says you need to run this line of code.
How did
Wait a
you
minute.
quit out of that window? Did you do QA exclamation point, or is there an easier way?
VI, when I was in here,
Yeah.
yeah, I hit :Q. Actually, I hit :WQ to save and then write.
Oh.
Save, write, and quit is what it would stand for. And then if you're in insert mode and need to get out of that, it's like if you're in insert mode and doing some typing, to get out of that, you push escape. Again, you can always check because your cursor won't go all the way to the end of the line if you're not in insert mode. So hit escape and then :and Q. Oh, we didn't look at where that opened, did we? One of the config files that we didn't look at earlier. So I did want to show that whenever I installed it again. That's the easiest way to get all your global information in there. It's going to ask for it and then give you a copy and paste command. One of the config files we didn't look at points at Vim. Did I have a note of which one it was? I probably didn't write it in my notes. Username, Facebook. Share my screen, and Zoom is in the way. Go back in File Explorer here, and on the one in the user account, we have other information there. I believe it's in here. One of these config files does say, it actually says default text editor. So it's really easy to spot when you see it. That's the global config. It's under local config. Maybe we should open that here. cd.git. Or I could just do it this way. Git config local edit. Oh, it's not in there. Well, one of the things I said is dig through, and you will see one of the things says text editor equals Vim. As you dig through those files. Whoops, I didn't mean to stop. Screen share. Maybe it's in the other settings. Git config system. Edit. Anything about Vim there? Quit out of that. But it's probably not in not in one of those. Then it's going to be in the Git folder. I should have written it down in my notes when I was looking at it yesterday. And here, reference object logs. Oh, that just has the exclude. Oh, here's that commit message we made. So we can always go back in there and just edit those from anywhere. It's a bunch of text files, and we have text editors. So we're not restricted to doing it all here. We're just building up a bunch of text files. The restriction is on like that system edit, right? Because we have to reset those values. And if you're on a Linux system, that's not a restriction because you have access to the file. But On a Windows machine, it's restricted.
And just for giggles, I deleted the folder and recreated the folder to the, recreated the filtering folder, reinitialized, and there it was main. So it took across the board. So.
Okay. So yeah, it's an active subject. We learn by doing. I wanted to do at least one interesting thing on module 1, something that you definitely wouldn't have seen before. You all have all seen text editors before, right? Text files, you probably had some idea of what was going on with that. I believe our textbook talks about that a lot. Our textbook doesn't include filtering. So we need to make we want to make a filter, automated processes. So the one I settled on was we set it to get rid of empty lines. Was what so like when we write a Python script, we usually spread things out a little, indentation matters, but we spread it out with empty lines to make it easier to read. So the filter I decided to go with was just a quick get rid of all those empty lines when we stage the files. So we have 2 types of filters, clean and smudge, and we always want to set both of them. We'll give basically when we create a filter, we give it a name, and then we set something with that name for a clean filter, and that applies when we stage the files. So that's the add when we run that git add the file that we just changed that we want to add, track in our repository. That's staging. So that runs the clean filter. And when we pull things out, when we check out, that means we start a new branch where we look at the repository when we make changes. And well, part of version control is we don't get an error message if we do, but we shouldn't edit on the main branch. We should create a side branch. We won't see branches for a couple weeks yet, but I believe everybody's at least heard that word before, right? What we should do is create a side branch, do our edits there, and that way the main is still working. And once we get that branch debugged, then we put it back on there. So checkout is when we go to a different branch. So smudge filters run at checkout, and we just give the filter a name, set what it's going to do with clean when we stage files, and what it does at checkout when we jump to another branch, when we create a new branch off in our repository. And that's the smudge filter. And then we just tell it what script to run. Git is pretty much entirely written in bash scripts, but I decided to go with Python because I had a feeling everybody in here has seen some Python. So a whole bunch of head nods earlier, and yeah, so a whole bunch of y'all had me for a class with Python, so I know a bunch of y'all did. So I was just going to write a quick Python script, nothing too fancy. I can cancel out of the book and pull up my examples so that I don't go down rabbit holes. I keep my examples up, and you all probably noticed by now I'm easily distracted. So I often have an example to just prevent me from going off on the rabbit hole, getting like halfway through the script and be like, oh wait, I have a better idea. Let's change this in the middle of class while y'all are trying to follow along, that sort of thing. So I have an example to prevent me from doing that. I create that file. Okay, so I didn't save that file earlier when I created it. So if you have your text editor create a file, this is consistent for any of the systems. You can type BI and file name. I'm going to call it clean filter.py. So obviously we're going to set something up for staging, and this is going to go on our clean filter instead of our smudge filter from the name there. And we just set up what we want it to do. So we need to create that file. We also need to create a file called .get attributes. Make sure it's plural. Yep, we'll need those 2 files. We'll also make a script here in a minute to see the filter apply. Well, I'll go ahead and create that now. I'll call it script.py. So I want the text editor to go ahead and create these 3 files. And if you, I think in VI, you might have to do one at a time. I don't recall ever doing this, but if you have another text editor like VS Code, or if you use Sublime, I really like Sublime. I paid for you can use Sublime for free forever. I did pay for the license. The license, it might be up to $100 now. Everything, all the prices went up and eventually they had to raise it. It was $80 forever, and it's a forever license for every version of Sublime they ever make.
So what's the difference between the licensed and unlicensed?
Unlicensed will stay unregistered copy up here.
Okay,
It's a completely open source project. It's really nice.
so basically it's you contributed, you did.
Yeah. And really the paying the $100 is so that you can claim it as an itemized deduction if you're making good money with it. The settings are entirely in JSON. So really, really nice if you're a programmer. You have to customize it, but you can set it, tie into the terminal, all that, all the normal good stuff. Sublime 4 also uses the GPU. So it splits some of the load. Text editors aren't big, but it splits some of the load for the things that don't require intensive calculation, like predictive text and coloring. That goes through a GPU if you have one. So there's our script. We'll make up some script there in a moment. So I'll start by writing the Python script. So what I'm going to do is delete those blank lines. So kind of clean it up. I guess another good example might have been if we had like some HTML and CSS or something that's going to be transmitted. All of those line feeds are 32 bits each that need to be transmitted because they're carriage return line feeds. They have to be transmitted across TCP. So to transmit those 32 bits is probably going to require an extra 128 bits. And that really adds up over time. So usually we do things like this for CSS and JavaScript, and we get rid of all that white space that's only for the human.
Now, is that permanent? I got rid of, so if somebody goes to edit, now the white space is gone?
That's what the smudge filter is for.
Okay.
So the clean filter, we put it on there when we save. So we're going to get rid of all those white lines when we save it. So it's going to put it on there. And then a smudge filter, it wouldn't add them back in consistently. In this case, that's where we're only writing one. But we could set it to add empty lines between everything when we bring it back in to make it readable. But I was just removing them. So it's most often used for encryption and decryption. So encrypt the stuff when you go to stage it and store it on the repository, and then decrypt it the next time the programmer needs to work on it. So clean encrypts it and smudge decrypts it.
Okay.
So I need a reference to the path. So if you didn't see this, this wasn't shown in the latest version of the online shell for some reason. OS accesses your operating system. Very useful to have access to your operating system from the language. os.path is the file path thing. So I'm going to create a variable, use the operating system to get current working directory, things that are built in there. That way I have the file path to the spot where we're currently located, so we can look at all our file names. And I'm going to make a list of them. And there's going to be a whole bunch of things, right? It's going to be files and directories and all sorts of stuff. So I need to check through that. Fourth thing in os.path.list directory, list dir. Oh wait, sorry, no path here. os.list dir. So have the operating system list our current directory. And this time we need the other. So if the operating system file path we're on is file, we have is dir and is file. So if we check to see if it is a directory or is a file, go into an if to go right into a condition. Hopefully that makes sense. You've never seen this before. Then we want to do stuff, and this is going to look like a mess, a big object-oriented mess if you haven't seen it. So normally we wouldn't have all of this. We would import it in the way we wouldn't have to type it every time. But since this is a class example, I wanted to explicitly type it so you can see where these things are coming from. Normally it would be from OS import asterisks and from os.path import asterisks, and then we just have everything. Right. It's a lot easier to deal with, but I want to make sure y'all see where it's coming. Got to do it a little bit different in classroom examples. And from os.path, there's this method join that will put it together. So instead of typing our directory, this is just to type the directory. So look at that variable path. That's why I grabbed it earlier, and join that with the thing, which thing is the name of the file we're looking at. So if it's looking at cleanfilter.py, that goes into thing, and path in this case would be on my computer c/user/string/documents/delete/filtering that thing, whatever. Yeah, all of this. So there's the git current working directory, and then this is just, well, this is what happens when we do ls. There's the list of all the files here. Well, this, as soon as we hit save, that list will get longer, which I should probably do because we've typed a bunch of code. There we go. So now we got a couple things in there. That's what list directory does. And then join, it's good to use that method because every system is a little bit different, right? I'm on Windows, so I should be using the / works, spaces cause problems. But it'd also be nice to take the same code and run it on a Linux machine without any problem, where it has to be /. So then which way do we put it together? And if we use the join method, Python will do it at runtime for the system we're on and just put it together appropriately and deal with all the spaces and file names and all of that stuff for us. So hopefully all that makes sense if you haven't seen it before. And I know you saw this one. So if it is a file, so that gets our file name, and then we're just going to check this method, if it is a file, and that's going to return true or false. So if it is, just append it to the list. Append. So that gets us a list of everything in our repository. Let's look at this. I'm going to erase this line here. If it's not a file, then it's a directory, right? And if it's a directory, what we would really probably do is put this in a function. And then put that in a function. And if it's a directory, call this and go into that directory. So go a level deeper and then do this same thing a level deeper. And if it's a file, keep going a level deeper over and over. Omit that for clarity here. But if anybody would like to see that, put it in the chat room. And I have many examples, because every time I teach the Python class on campus, that is definitely something that makes it an example. It's a great example of recursive calls. We just, if it's a file, add it to the list. If it's a folder, go into that folder and do the same thing you did in this folder, and keep doing that till you run out of folders to go into. So a great example of recursion. I can send you an example of that to look at if you would like. Just mention it in the chat room. So that gives us a list of all the stuff in our repository. So I'm just create a variable called content, a blank string, so that I can modify the contents of that file. We'll just parse through every single one of those files. And if we do the strip method, has everybody seen that? Strip removes the white space. So it takes away our leading and trailing tabs and spaces, along with carriage returns and line feeds. So then all we have is words. So if we do strip, it'll get rid of everything but words. So if all we had was white space, then that means we had an empty line. So I'm just going to clean that out of there. So for if in files, I always use the with notation. This just feels more natural for Python. Those who didn't have me for Python class or were online, so we did a lot of lectures. We have Python keyword, what's unique to our situation, and then a colon. So reading files with the with syntax, I feel is more, That's what feels more like the natural Python syntax to me. So instead of putting open equals some variable where we store it and keep referring to it, open F in read mode as from file. Sounds like a good name for the handler.
Looking at your example file, are you not using the if?
Oh, good idea. I was going to add the if in afterwards, but yes, since you mentioned it, we only want to do this to the Python files. We don't want to do this to our README, right? I was going to let it happen to the README and add that in. I forgot I put it in the example file when I sent that out. So if f and from -2 to the end, everybody's seen that syntax before, right? We're going to f is the file name. So let's look at the last 2 characters. And if those are py, so it's a .py file, then we'll do that. Yeah, that's a good idea because we only want to do this in the Python scripts. Our commit method, that blank line between the title and the body, and then another blank line between the body and the footer. We do not want to remove that blank line. So that's why the if one is there, because it would, if we did it to every file, it would mess things up. But thank you, Tia. I didn't forget about that. It's a good thing I sent that out, even though everybody has seen Python. So we're going to open that.
Feel like I see less than I should.
First thing is let's reset content so we have a blank thing and then read in all those lines. Which you probably got used to doing like the from file.read lines method, and we read them all at once. But we really only care if there's a blank line here, so we need to set up a condition. So if, oops, the blank line. So if, and this is another thing we never get from textbooks. So those who haven't had me in class, this one I've been going in order. Usually I jump around a lot when writing code, and you don't see that if you're like in online classes where you're only seeing the textbook and the finished version. The computer has to have it in a certain order, but that's probably not the order we think about it in. So like here, first thing I want to do is read in the line. So okay, for line in from file. So I'll read all those lines in. And first thing I wanted to do is read in the line to check what it is. And then I'll call the strip method. And then check the length of it. So I'll come back here and wrap all that in parentheses. If that's equal to 0, and notice how I was jumping around back and forth in that line. Also, I don't like writing at the bottom of a file. Whoops. I don't like writing at the bottom of a screen, so I'm going to add some white space. Which is
Does
going
it
to
matter if we do read file versus from file?
From file.
Oh no, you just had read file, so I was just curious if it makes a difference.
Just that's a variable. So
Okay.
the other would be like from file equals open, and then we put the file name here. That might be the way you're used to seeing it. So this is just an alternative syntax, and this is a different way of writing the equal sign. It lets us write things going left to right instead of right to left. And yeah, in the example, I put read file, but that's just the name of the handler, the thing that's reading the file. So in that handler, for every line in that handler, if we strip it down and end up with a length of 0, then we know it's a blank line. So then we'll set content equal to a blank line. Otherwise, that means we have some code there. So we'll set content equal to that line. All that makes sense? It sounded like you had a question there, Tia.
Oh no, I didn't. Just from file, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a variable, so it could be like whatever. as long as
Yes.
it's the same.
Yes. And the current version of the SDEV 220 class focuses so much on the modern tools because they tried to do everything in 8 weeks.
I honestly, well, I've had it 1 day a week.
We need
The
to see
teacher
everybody.
did not show up for 4 of the classes,
Oh,
and yeah,
that's difficult. Yeah.
and yeah, so I felt like I learned a little bit off of some videos, and that was it. Like, some of this is completely new to me. Like, I get it because I've coded for a while, so I understand syntax, or I understand content more than the syntax.
Okay, so syntax isn't the important part we get from the SDEV program, right?
Right,
The important part is logic because
right. I get the logic.
Mojo's coming out in a couple weeks here. In a couple weeks, the guy that wrote the language Swift, which Apple exclusively uses because it's such a great language. He took on the challenge of making Python faster because it's our slowest language, but it's also our most popular language. And he made Python 4,000 times faster. That's coming out this summer.
Okay, so Mojo doesn't exist yet.
You can go ahead and use it, but as a beta tester.
Mhm.
But the official release hasn't happened yet. It's nice. You can use emojis in your code too.
Yeah, well, and that's,
I'm excited.
that's
I
one
haven't
thing,
ever used an
you know,
emoji in the code.
really, I already know how to talk. It's just a matter of learning another language. So I understand the logic. It's just understanding it,
Yeah, and that's what it is, because languages change over the years. The one we use is going to vary. So now I'll just open a file with 2 files. So again, it's that alternative assignment. And then with has using the with syntax instead of just setting that as a variable and doing everything manually. With has some built-in error handling. Might as well talk about Python because the current version of Python talks about modern tools and doesn't dig into Python super in depth. So we'll write that content variable where we just stored everything except for the empty lines. Because we didn't even put a line feed there. We didn't even put /n. We got rid of all of that stuff. So we write back everything that's not an empty line. And that should be enough for the script. Does that stuff make sense? And I like the with notation. So we have keyword, something unique to our situation, a colon, and then we indent stuff. Or the for loop. Keyword, something unique to our situation, a colon, and then we indent stuff. Or the if block. Keyword, unique to our situation, a colon, and we indent stuff. So that's what I think of as the Python syntax. That's why I really like it, but with also has some built-in error handling. Good.
See, the one basically I struggle with, not necessarily tabbing. Tabbing I get, I would naturally do that anyway. The lack of indexes, that just drives me bonkers.
Yeah. At first, if you're used to like C family, it's the lack of semicolons and curly braces sounds nice until you spend several hours looking for the missing white space. Looking for a missing curly brace or an extra curly brace has nothing on looking for the missing white space or the extra white space. Actually, this script might be good for finding the extra white space. Run it through there and it gets rid of all the blank lines. So that's our script. It's going to get rid of all the blank lines. That makes sense to everybody. So now we need to set it up to run. And to do that, we have to define it. So over in
Or attributes.
get attributes and then one of our config files. I'll put it in get attributes first, since that file's here. So asterisk.py. Everybody know what that line means? Asterisk, it's a normal wildcard
Everything
selector. Yeah, everything that ends with .py. Whatever characters fit there, as long as .py is at the end, which that also would have worked for our selection structure where we just went last 2 characters, could done everything up to .py. That, or we could do .txt or whatever one we're doing, a space, and then we'll say filter equals, and this is a bash instruction, so no space by filter. It's a command prompt instruction, things are space delimited. So that asterisk.py or asterisk.txt or if you want to do it thanks to the readme *.md, whatever you're dealing with. You probably don't want to do *.*. That would start messing up. I did try that yesterday and basically had to do a hard reset on the computer, and whenever it started back up, I was able to delete the folder very quickly before it started doing things again. What the hell? So the normal precautions and stuff. If you give the instruction, it'll just start doing stuff. But I found several things that would probably count as viruses or sabotage a team if like you got fired from a programming job or something. But we'll do something useful like get rid of our extra white space. And then the filter needs a name. What's a good name for this? No empty. That's something I call it no empty. The restriction is no spaces. Don't put any spaces in your name. It's a variable name, essentially. So it's kind of backwards. Where the filter is applied this no empty thing, and we're going to create the no empty in the config file. This other one, script.py here, this is for our script. So like import emoji, because everybody's seen emoji. Pip install emoji. The SEC has regulations over emojis. Right? It's part of our language. It doesn't get more official than emojis. All day long, I get business emails all day long that include emojis. It's part of the English language. We need to use it. So pip install emoji gives us that. You can see all the versions of it and stuff. That'll bring it into your system. And where'd my text editor go? So emoji, and then we can print stuff. So print emoji library.emojize as a variable. And then there's a handful that we can use right in the string. Python emoji. This does not have all of the emoji because in all of Unicode, there are thousands of graphic artists around the world constantly adding emojis. And this particular library has 2 programmers down in Mexico City adding emojis. So they can't really keep up with all of it. But if you search for Python emoji, you'll see it on the PyPeople page, PyPeople. Different ways to see it. And this one right here, get carpe diem 20.github emoji, that has all of them. They have a list for. So we have.
Why would you do pip install emoji? Do I have to do Python pip install emoji?
You can always do it that way. Python-m pip install emoji.
Yeah, because
Mine is you have to do pip3 install emoji. I don't know why.
Are you in PowerShell, Phil?
Yeah, I was on. I switched over even to the other one. Right.
Okay, yes. The anything with Nix in the system, so like Mac OS, that's actually a Unix-based system, Linux, anything with Nix was built using Python. So Python 2.7 is in there. So there's a bunch of them here. Globe. So globe showing Americas. I'll just copy that. Maybe my cursor will act correctly. Do that, and then that goes right in our string. So globe showing Americas. I missed a colon. So colon, emoji name, and then that. So there's also a wave emoji, right? Colon. What's wave? Wave. Oh, not water wave, waving hand, waving underscore hand. So that's how we get emojis. Waving underscore hand gets us emojis because they are part of our language. They're this past spring, the SEC put forward official restrictions that involve emojis. Do not send people a rocket emoji if you're talking about stocks. That's insider trading.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it doesn't get more official than that. So it's part of our language. So I'm gonna run this now. So like open the terminal and then do Python script Oh, can't do it there. We do that over here. Python script.py. There we go. So I guess hello world, just a quick way to do that.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's not really that. I figured that if you didn't have a need for Python, you hadn't seen emojis, and emojis are part of our language. Right? There are certain emojis that if you send them to certain people, if certain people send them to certain other people, the SEC will send you to prison over that. Especially if you send a rocket and the rocket emoji and the chart emoji.
What if the information is wrong?
Then it's just bad insider trading.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's the insider trading situation, right? Like, if you send it to your siblings, that's one thing, but if you own a company and send it out, that's where it falls under those criteria. We'll look at that in a while because that's not really part of GitHub. I just want to make sure you saw the emoji and emoji.emojize, so you know it's part of our language, and we're going to look it up.
Oh, where's this at? Like I don't even have it, even though I've used it before.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'll build.
I don't look at that, but yeah. So we should look at the Git stuff. So now we have a script. We have the filter will run. We put it in our Git attributes. We need to add that to our config file. So git config. This one's going to default to local, but we can go ahead and put it on local. Type -- local anyway. Actually, I'm going to leave off local. It goes to the local, but if you like to be explicit, that whole idea of like Zen of Python Zen, if you've ever done that, import this and run your Python code. So we can import this, and there's an important message there. Explicit is better than implicit is one of the lists on there. So could push -- local, but I'm going to leave that off to express the point that when we say git config, it defaults to a different one of those three depending on what we write afterwards. So I'm going to go with filter dot the name, and we call that no empty. Over in the Git attributes. There was a big distraction since then. But in Git attributes, we called our filter no empty. So git config filter.noEmpty, and then there's a clean one. Then we put a space, and then the command prompt or terminal or PowerShell instruction that we want to run. And ideally, it should work in the Git bash shell. So it should work in that Git bash shell that installed in the background on your shell. So Python or Python 3 if it's appropriate for your system, and then run that clean filter.py. Make that a little bit wider so that don't get word right. So that adds our clean filter, which happens when we stage the files. When we do the add, right before we commit them, that's when the clean filter runs. And the smudge filter runs when we clone a repository. So most often it would be like encryption and decryption. Right before we commit it, encrypt everything so that if it's public repository, people can't see that. They can't see the secure stuff. And then when we pull the repository, decrypt it. And not everybody is going to have that decryption algorithm.
Right.
So the other one is going to be very similar, git config, and we do have to do both of them and spell config correctly. Filter.noEmpty.smudge, and we're not doing anything in it this time. We're not writing that one, so I'm going to do the concatenate command. So concatenate all the lines in that text file together with in the same order they're in. So no extra parameters, just concatenate the file back together the way it is. It's kind of the pass for a filter. because we have to put something there. So, we look over here, we've got our script written. Let me add some spaces and print something else. Print emoji.emojize, colon, thumbs up, colon. I think that's the right one. So we have some bunch of white space, spreading it out, make it easier to type when we put it together, right? It's in there, so we make some changes to our repository. Some say git add dot. Oh. .NET is not defined. Name error, name. Where did I put content? I was obviously supposed to spell content. Oh, in the Python script.
Yes.
So you can see it tried to run that script. We're getting a Python error message now. So
Variable content equals,
oh,
you have it in 3 different places.
it seemed to have erased my file. Oh, Git has it locked up. It's locked up in Git, and it crashed, so it couldn't bring it back to it. So you're testing your filters. Make sure you have a backup copy. This
Before I do that, I want to make sure mine.
did anybody else get an error message? That was just a typo on my part. I think all the logic was correct, but I happen to have a backup copy right over here. What?
That's not funny, but yes. But you're like two authentication. It's like, oh, you can't get in.
I also have a backup copy on my normal Google Drive. That's a terribly inconvenient time for that to have happened. I was told that was going to happen, but I already have to enter all that stuff anyway. It's just added to students, but it was going to pass, but they couldn't just.
Oh, yeah.
They had to say everybody, so I have to do it again. So here
I can paste it in the Zoom chat, but you're gonna have to do a lot of tabbing.
yeah.
Yep, mine, now,
I have it right here, so I can just download.
when I did add it, went through and I did get status and it popped them both in.
Okay, so I'll grab this one here and downloads. Copy that over to this directory. Filtering, paste that in, replace the file. And now I should be able to open it here. Okay. And yeah, this had different variable names, but it should be the same thing.
Now, get attributes doesn't show up in the ads. I noticed that.
But oh, notice that as soon as I put it in there, it was still trying to run it. I had to fix that. I had to bring that code back in to type it, but it already removed those lines. I cancel that for a second. Cancel. Ignore for a second. And add a couple lines in there. When I save it, it should try to do that again. I saw it flashing, so it should. I think because I clicked ignore all. But it removed them at one point. Maybe I can get it in over here. Add in some white space. Whoops. Reload. Notice how it's constantly doing it.
That was my get attributes.
I can add the white space back in, but it's trying to reload. It's still trying to edit that file. So it's the filter constantly runs.
Is that
Once the file is staged and being watched,
Oh, wow.
it's going to keep doing it.
I'll try to.
That's how I accidentally set up some things that would like
Oh,
really mess up a repository yesterday, trying to find something other than a standard example. I'll save that, and if I open that back up, it's partial. Sublime script.py. Yeah, when I closed it and reopened it, when I close, so I said ignore all that. I clicked the ignore button and then it stopped erasing those. Did everybody see that? So over here in my text editor. Oops. Ignore the fact that it's different. So then I can come in here and do some more editing. Print regular words instead of emojis. So I'll save it. I'll go ahead and close it. I did hit save and then it tried to do some changes in the background. So I'm gonna click no, don't save that. And then reopen it and it got rid of all the white. So the filter is constantly running. But I wanted to try to work that into week 1, something a little more interesting than what, hopefully a little more interesting than stuff you've seen before in GitHub, because most of the stuff tonight was looking at text files, right? And looking at text files isn't the most interesting thing. But those can be useful. You can do lots of things. A good place to track stuff, send emails. That's one of the most common uses, right behind. Actually, I don't know which one would be more common, because some people would just not put things that need to be encrypted in their repository. They would just leave that out altogether. But right behind encryption and decryption, or maybe right ahead of it, is have a script that automatically emails your boss, emails the project manager when the issue is fixed, and automate that whole process. Automate your team members, letting you know you did that.
See, I'm a compulsive committer. Like I'm one of those people that, I am not every change, but if I change or if I change between too many files, like if I'm working on Django is a perfect example because you're working in URLs and views, and once I make a change in all 3, I'll tend to.
So that's something we want to be careful with, because the commits are something special. You want to keep your working directory. You want to make all the changes, and you have it in your working directory. Your version control really shouldn't be your backup. Most people do it that way, but really the version control should not be the backup. You should have another backup separately. So every little change that goes into your backup. The commits are for something big. The general rule of when we start talking about that is going to be a commit should fix an issue. That's what the footer and the message is for. So what did we do here? We added, actually past tense, that's for Tuesdays. This is a bad message. Added a clean filter. I know Mateo's already looked at some module 2 stuff, so he knows why that's a bad message. Does anybody else know why that's a bad message?
I mean, you said
It's brief. We didn't ramble on. That's for the body. Yes, past tense. Because 6 months from now, if we start digging through our version, we're doing it in live time. Those little subtleties, kind of like in the database class, when you heard conventions there, you remember saying during the table name should be singular. That throws everybody off first, because the table represents that row in the database, not all of the rows. The table name, so it should be singular, so it's like that. If it's 6 months from now before we have to go back through and dig through our commits and figure out what happened along the way, it's not past tense because we're doing it in live time. Version control, we can get back to any previous version. So there's not really a past tense in our thing. So present tense is better for names, which by the way is a question on a quiz. That's why it's already shown up. So it was on the lecture notes.
But in the description, you can use.
Yeah, and then so the title, that's for the title. Because when we pull these up in a second, let me write the description. Example of a filter by removing white space in Python scripts every time we stage changes. And once we stage a change, Git keeps watching it. Issue this C number 7. They're gonna look like that. If we type C number 7, it would refer to a certain one. We could type resolve number 7, and that's what goes in the footer, and then that will go into like GitHub and remove the flags and close issues and stuff for us. So that's an instruction we'll use later. I'm just gonna put footer is for issues here for now. So all that's ready there. So then when we save and close out of the commit, it does that. And if we check our log, git log, we get that big version, which we have to scroll to see now. So usually what we're gonna do is git log and then the 1 line option. And again, it's 2 dashes on 1 line. So git log 1 line, and it gives us the abbreviation. So we see the head and then that title. All we see is that first line.
Okay, that makes sense.
We have to go back into the git log. So git commit amend, take us back in that log, and we can do any edits and stuff there. Go back out of here. So the title and then the footer was put there, but then eventually the footer is pretty much reserved for issue tracking anymore. We type resolve number 7, that will close one of our issues. That will go over to what's essentially the forum page, where somebody reported a bug and all kinds of people posted discussing about it and commented back and forth. And y'all know how the forums go. Probably 50 people went in there and wrote me too, which you're not actually supposed to do. That's why forums have have emoji buttons, because it is not helpful to go to a forum, find somebody has a problem and say, me too. It's like, okay, yeah. So that is actually why forums have emojis, but that's a different point. We have access to all that, and hopefully that gave a good idea of what we're studying this semester. We're studying those text files and what goes in there. And hopefully the filtering was a little more interesting than the seen before. Was everybody in the Zoom call able to get that working? See a thumbs up there. Yeah, that's exactly what emojis are for, the reactions.
Yeah, I had a minor typo bug on mine as well, where I didn't tap one of the widths and I forgot a colon in. As soon as I fixed them, because I had already committed, all of a sudden my file shrank.
So yeah,
So it
big
kicked
thing,
right in as soon as I fixed the file.
yeah, the big thing to remember is it's constantly running.
Yeah.
So if you ignore it, hit save, and then it's going to tell you the file's not saved because it's trying to do things and you already told it to ignore those things. Then just close, but make sure you save first.
I mean, you can kind of see yours is flashing.
Yeah, you can see it flashing. Because it does, it just wiped the file, right? It brought everything in and then replaced everything. We just put that in a different string and rewrote it. How quickly can I hit the buttons? Save that, close it, open it back up. Reload. So notice it got rid of the breaks and the 2 or 3 times I was able to hit tab there. Seeing it early, it might seem odd that it's constantly running, but that will make more sense later. I wanted to do something interesting the first week. Any questions about filters? Do you see how it can be useful?
Yes.
It is limited to your repository, so try some things. It's an active subject we learn by doing. Try some different things, and if it starts to go crazy, close your terminal, go over to File Explorer or Finder or whatever the appropriate name for the graphical approach to your folders and directories and files is, and delete it from there. And that worst case, that's what you have to do, because it's only happening in that one folder if something goes too far. It's the best way to learn though, right? We don't learn anything from the stuff we get right. We learn when we get stuff from the mistakes we made. Okay, that was a few seconds since asking me if I had any questions. I don't hear any responses. That went a little bit longer than I had planned. I thought we were gonna end. I was expecting it about 15 minutes ago. But there's still like 20 minutes left in our class time. So I will just be sitting around waiting for questions. So if I'm the last person on campus or anybody else that's on campus, like already walked out to the car and is sitting there answering emails on the phone or something, talking on the phone. Like if I'm the last person on campus, I'll probably head back to Clarksville. So there's like a 10-minute gap. I live right by the interstate in Clarksville. So I go 3 exits up, get off the exit, and I'm a quarter mile from my house. There's one. So if I'm the last person on campus, I will go ahead and head that way. But otherwise, I will sit the rest of our class time. I'll just be sitting around waiting for questions to come my way. Playing around with filters, they will have more applications. We'll have a sort of an assignment with filters later when we've seen all of the pieces to them. I just want to make sure we do something interesting first week. Hopefully that was a little more interesting than other things you've seen with GitHub. A little more interesting than just saving the file.
That's all I've honestly ever really used it for. It's a save and upload it to GitHub so I can provide the link so somebody else can look at it.
Oh yeah, we can do so. There's so much more we can do. Because when you upload it to GitHub, they can do more than that. They can point off of it. They can make a different version of it.
Well, so
Oh, I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great weekend. If you have any questions, let me know. I will see you all on Tuesday, and next week we will get into commits in a lot of detail. And maybe some branches.
Do we